Okay, everybody ready? Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so I'll make a motion for the approval of the agenda, and make a motion for an amendment for 10B to add the property maintenance ordinance. Comments or questions? All in favor? Is there a motion for the approval of the minutes for March 9th?
Motion.
There, second?
Second.
Okay, so, on the minutes of March 9th, I just wanted to clarify one section under the treasurer's report. We were talking about the purchase of the dump truck, and there is a payment of $124,115 out of the general fund and $100,000 out of liquid fuels. And I think what we were saying was that the general fund will be reimbursed $124,115 instead of $100,000. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so then the minutes are what the minutes are from what we had said before, but
Well, we can
today's
take out the
minute-
words, the 100,000, that's fine. I mean, whatever that number is.
or you could say reimburse the general fund to $124,115. Right? The liquid fuels account will reimburse the general fund
I
$124,000.
think it was spoken in more generality, so if you want to make it 124, 115 and 20 cents or whatever that number is, that's fine.
Well, yeah, to match what we said on the
I mean,
bills. You know, and I also just want to make it clear that we voted to approve the bill. I'm not so much in favor of just yet.
well, that was part of the discussion of how the truck was being paid for was brought up, and that
Yeah.
was part of the vote. Correct? No,
You made a motion to approve the general fund payables in the amount of $300,839.42.
right.
That was the motion that was seconded, and that was the motion that was voted on.
But during the discussion of the general fund payables, this is where the discussion was of how the truck was going to be paid for.
We did not vote on how the truck was getting paid for.
Well, Mark,
It said here, what did we not discuss?
Under the treasurer's report,
it says it.
right?
Liquid fuels account, the 100K of the cost stated that over the next 4 years, the liquid fuel account will reimburse the general fund 100,000.
Yes, at the time I voted yes to pay the bills, the motion. To pay the payables in the amount of 300. I'm not ready to commit to a 4-year loan. I would prefer to pay it right away if we could.
But
for
why
the
didn't you
next
bring it
year.
up when we had the meeting?
I don't know, I was surprised that you were doing it over the next 4 years, and it didn't matter,
There was no
because
surprise.
when we prepare the budget, we will decide how this gets paid back. At the time, the length of time it will take to pay it back, because this is part of the 2024 budget, which hasn't even been passed yet. So what we voted on, Mike Dwyer made a motion to approve the general fund payables in the amount of $303,839.42.
Correct.
Mark seconded that motion. We voted on it to pay the bill.
No, you're excluding the discussion. I mean, if there's a motion and a second, and there is discussion, that's what's considered when you take the vote. Am I wrong?
But generally speaking, you're right. I don't have an independent recollection of this discussion from this meeting, but, yeah, generally the discussion comes after the motion is made and seconded.
So I'm not sure
Well, I'm not in
Why are we
favor
gonna
of-
change the minutes from what? happened?
No, we're not gonna change the minutes. I'm just stating I'm not in favor of taking 4 years to pay off the general fund. If we have a capability to pay it off next year out of liquid funds, I would like to do that. But we haven't prepared the 2024 budget yet, so at that time, we can decide.
I mean, at that time, we can decide, but if we pay it all back next year, I mean, we didn't take a loan on it. We didn't
Right,
take a loan on it,
correct.
so we're not hoodwinked, you know, we don't have that interest rate, we don't have the years to
Right.
pay the thing off.
Right,
However, if we pay it all back next year, then that pretty much handcuffs us for any vehicle or any equipment we might be able to buy, right? Like,
Correct,
well,
because
well,
we
we
don't
don't,
use 20% of the liquid fuels budget.
correct. And that was the intention of using 20%. We haven't purchased a big truck in 5 years, so that's how we had the balance of $100,000 that we could use. And then the remainder will be over the next 4 years.
well, that discussion should have been had when we had the previous
Well, it-
meeting to vote on getting the truck in the first place.
I believe it was brought up at a workshop. It was explained often, our plan
I
for
did not-
2023. I mean,
Yeah,
I can't say
No,
who pays
I
attention, who
understand.
doesn't. But
right. Well, I'm just saying that when I voted to pay the bills. I would like to see when we prepare the budget, if there's a way to pay it off faster. So that's all.
okay, but again, that's not what the motion and that's not what the vote.
Okay, so we have everybody's point of view, and are we agreeing to amend the minutes then for the correct amount of what the liquid fuels account will repay the general fund?
Over the 4 years, yeah.
The general fund, the liquid fuels account will refund the general fund $124,115.
Right.
Right,
He stated that over the next 4 years, the liquid fuels account will reimburse the general fund.
you said 100,000.
Okay, so you can change that to 124, 115.
Right, that's what I'm
great.
asking.
Great. Good catch.
Okay. All right. So, any more discussion on the minutes of March 9th? All in favor? Aye. Okay, Pat, can we please have a report of executive session?
Sure, the board met briefly immediately before the public meeting this evening to discuss legal and litigation matters in executive session. No decisions were made, no votes were taken.
Thank you. Public comment on non-agenda items, anybody? No, seeing none, we'll move on to announcements and upcoming events. I believe we have. So coming up in April, there will be a fundraiser at the Community and Cultural Center for Maddie's Angels. So there's flyers over onto the side. It'll be attached to the minutes also and be posted on our website. This is a make your own tote bag workshop. So they're accepting applications for it. I think it's up to 10 people. So just to get that out there. And Mark, I believe you've got an announcement. The golf course opens
Next Friday,
next Friday.
31st. Although we may look to open a little early. The weather's right, then we,
And dry.
I'm right.
And Mike, I think you have an announcement for April 1st.
Yeah, April 1st is the extravaganza up at Redskill Park.
And that'll be that. Michelle, any correspondence? No. Okay, and now we're up to bid opening and possible award for the spring and fall cleanup containers.
Okay, first bid is waste management. $47.66 per yard.
Who was that by?
Waste management. Next one is Markey. $33.50. Last does not have a return address, so I don't know who it is. G&S Containers out of Oliphant. $29.93 a yard. We have time, huh? Yeah. We have time. So I will make a motion to accept or acknowledge receipt of these bids for review. Thank you.
Comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye. I'm not sure why they sent us an insurance that expired. Or does expire. What's today, the 23rd? Expires on Sunday. Well, we'll have to review these. And then, look for more to come next meeting. I will say that last year's winning bidder was $34 even, so we have one bid that's substantially higher and two that are lower, so slightly lower. So that's where we are.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Back to you for the treasurer's report.
Motion from the general account, $59,132.02.
Comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion from the sewer account, $68,022.67.
All second. Comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion from our golf account, $12,905.30.
Comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good. Okay, that brings us to the solicitor's report.
Thank you. The first item on my report is the draft alarm systems ordinance establishing requirements and restrictions for the installation and operation of alarm systems. At the last meeting, the board indicated a potential desire to have an ordinance on the books requiring registration for alarm systems within buildings within the township, as well as potentially requiring the owner and operators to pay a fee in the event of a certain threshold of false alarms throughout the calendar year. So that's the intent of this type of a draft ordinance. I'm not sure if what I've done, the way I drafted this one is the fine for the false alarms would start with the third false alarm in a calendar year, meaning the first two, they would get a notification after the second. And then if there was a third false alarm, there would be a fine. In the ordinance, I have it referencing your annual fee schedule resolution, so you can adjust those fines in that fee schedule, but I do have a minimum fine to be plugged in sections 1A and B. 1A being the minimum fine to be set for the third false alarm in a calendar year, and 1B for the fourth and subsequent false alarms in one calendar year. If the board has any comments or questions, if this is something that the board still wants to proceed with, if not, that's fine. Or if you do, what those two amounts you feel would be appropriate.
I'm just concerned with, under 80-2A.
Me too.
We're gonna
The
register every alarm in the township.
normally, that's how these ordinances are set up.
Doesn't Smithfield do this? I think Smithfield has this. I doubt that they registered everybody.
I mean, it's just getting the word out there. If people, you must register your alarms.
What happens if it goes off and it's not registered?
They're in violation of the ordinance.
Hmm.
And you provide them a notice, you provide them a notice that they have to register it. And usually as part of that registration, they fill out a very simple form. And in that application or registration form, they acknowledge the fact that they will be charged for false alarms following the second in a calendar year. So yeah, this is, I mean, I understand the angst in that it's gonna probably cause some administrative work on the front end, but these types of ordinances, you do see that it's the registration requirements associated with it.
Well, what would happen if they didn't have to register the alarm? And then the alarm, the fire company answers a false alarm. They have the address, they have the property owner, and the property owner gets fined. I guess, could this work without registering everybody?
Well, a lot of it would be taken out because you have some provisions addressing audible alarms, direct dial alarms, and if we don't have them registering, that doesn't necessarily always come into play.
But wouldn't all these alarms already be registered or somehow notified of the county?
I don't know.
Control center would have,
They don't do that anymore. You could self-register. I mean,
but
so
if there's a silent alarm, control center knows where it's coming from.
If they monitor, but they used to do that years ago where
Right.
you had to, everything went through the county, I
Mhm.
believe, and they stopped doing that.
There's-
Because it goes directly
Yeah.
to fire and police.
and it's cheaper for the person owning the alarm to self-monitor. So nobody monitors it.
Why don't them just through their phones?
Well, those types of alarms wouldn't be registered, but.
No,
anybody-
they wouldn't, but if I'm sitting at work and I get an alarm from my phone that my house is on fire, I call the fire department, they go out there and there's no fire. Cause it's a false alarm.
Then you're in violation.
Right,
You called in a false alarm, huh?
that's correct.
That's like
And I
pulling-
didn't,
That's like pulling a fire extinguisher.
and I wouldn't have to register that. So what I guess my question is, could this work without making everybody register? And maintaining a log of registered alarms?
I'd like to take a closer look. I think every one of that I've done requires the registration, and part of that is you're having those property owners acknowledge the fact that they're gonna be on the hook for late or false alarms. that sort of thing.
Yeah. Mhm.
But if the board feels strongly that you don't want the registration as part of the process, I'll look at it and get you a definitive answer between now.
I'm
and
just
next meeting. It's
curious.
gonna be, it won't be easy. When you have a list, I understand front end work, it's gonna be a lot, but once you have that list, it's a running tally and it's easier for the board or for the township to maintain. But I can look into it. If that's the concern of the board, I can look into it.
I don't think it'll work in practice, I don't think you'll. And again, why we're gonna charge an annual fee to everybody that registers their system?
Well, no, that's what we're trying to.
Well, that's what I'm saying, it says the registration fees will be set by the board of supervisors, annual fee schedule, and may be adjusted by. But I guess that means our budget, not necessarily an annual fee, right?
Where do you see this? Mike?
Bottom, last sentence of 80-2-A, last sentence,
Right.
I
I mean,
presume
you can
that's.
set that at zero. I mean, you can, the reason I have it in there is because if you put it in here, that's what it's always gonna be. I
Right,
always have it reference the fee schedule resolution, so if you don't have a fee for registration, it's fine. Usually the registration fee, the intent is to offset whatever administrative costs the township may have in the registration process.
yeah, but is this? I mean, does this go all the way down to a smoke detector?
It goes to what you want. I mean,
That's what I'm saying,
I don't know.
Now, how do you,
Yeah, this is, right now, this reads, it's an all-encompassing false alarm.
Right.
ordinance. I'm not sure what the intent or what the desire is from the board. Last meeting, I was notified that this is something that you're looking for.
Right, I
Right.
think this part about registering should come out in my mind. I think. It's not necessarily to. Identify who has what and where, it's to stop the unnecessary and duplicative false alarms for the fire. I wish there was something we could do for EMS, but maybe there's something we could do with that.
That was the message that we've gotten from all the fire departments, that there's a few around that are just habitual, one guy who can't cook, so his fire alarm's going off all the time. But then in a few business.
More than not, they'll send a chief out for it.
So so you wanna see if we can remove the registration process,
Yeah,
Correct.
and then. Do you want it to encompass, right now, the way, if you look at the definition, alarm system, mechanical, electrical, or some alerting others about the commission of an unlawful act and or the occurrence of a fire and or other emergency situation
Mhm.
within a building. So basically, it's an all-encompassing alarm. If you wanted to only cover certain types of alarms, we can do that. We'd have to adjust the definition. And like I said, I don't know what the, what resulted in the board wanting to consider an alarm ordinance at this
The genesis is, it was the fire department
ask for it.
constantly,
Okay,
you know,
so
yeah,
fire.
they have.
So we're talking fire.
Right.
Mhm. Okay. I mean, we could tailor it to just fire, if that's something the board.
That would be my preference, honestly.
You probably don't want to stick the burglar ones.
Well, especially a burglar alarm, then we'd have to pay
And let's
ourselves.
just be clear, this is not saying that after 2 alarms, false alarms are gonna not respond. They're gonna respond, but if it's another false alarm, the owner will just pay
Right.
the fee. Yeah, we're not saying that they're not gonna respond to emergency alarms. They're gonna respond. It's just, if there's continuous false alarms,
Correct,
they'll get hit with a fee.
right.
I think burglary should be tied in with it, Mike. I don't know why you wouldn't, why you would just do fire. Although I know it's fire that asked for
Then
it.
you have to track the state police, right?
Right,
You know what?
Then you have to track the state police coming out.
right. Then you have to get a list from the state police of false alarm,
Well,
of
yeah,
false calls.
just tell them that we have the ordinance. If they choose not to give us the list, that's their problem. I mean, if they keep going to the same house for bad burglary alarms and they don't wanna do anything about it, that's.
And is it only if any of the agencies are called? So if the fire alarm is going off, somebody pieces on the phone, that they don't call the fire company and they come home first, then that's a no.
So, a false alarm is defined in here, and it's any alarm signal to which police, firefighters, or other emergency or rescue personnel respond, which is not the result of any burglary, fire, robbery. or
Correct.
emergency. So they have to actually respond. I'll just say again, with the registration process, part of a key component of that is when they register, they're agreeing and understanding that they are gonna get charged with a fee with that of a false alarm. So it's a way to almost eliminate any potential argument against getting hit with that fee.
Well, I think the way to get around that is you have the false alarm, you get the term for the front. With the ordinance, that.
Relationship status?
You can know that.
I'm filling out the.
Folks, you need to mute yourself.
She did.
I did.
Oh, thank you.
So, however the board wants to proceed, I can remove registration. I'll look into it just to make sure that that's not gonna create a legal
See
issue.
how that would, if it could
And what
work that
about
way.
the types of alarms? Do we want to keep it all at this point, or do we just want to? All right. I mean, I think the fire department gets called for more than just fires on occasion, correct? do they respond to other?
Yeah, but not necessarily from a homeowner or a property owner. But they'll get called out by the state police if there's a tree down or what have you, I mean.
Well, it's up to the board.
I would tailor it more towards the fire and, I mean, if you think there's a way to quantify it, and we have police as well, that's up to you guys. I think, again, the genesis was the fire department that asked for it.
Yeah.
So I think we should work
Why
to
don't we
adopt
start
the
there?
fire, and then we can sort of expand on it if we feel it works.
If the state police should come to us and say, why weren't we anything?
Right, right.
Do you want to talk about the minimum fee for the third false alarm and then fourth and beyond? I've seen anywhere from 50 for the first and then up to 100 for the next, and then, but I didn't put anything in, I don't know what you would.
What
Not only do I want to talk about the fee, but I want to talk about where does it go to?
Correct.
Well,
Who are we to
yeah.
charge? Because the fire department went out for.
Well, it'll be.
Well, I think the idea
fire
is,
department will notify you, it'll be reimbursed to the fire department.
yeah, that's.
Yeah,
what-
this isn't a revenue generating
Yeah.
for the township, this is reimbursed the fire
Do you
department.
take a fee, a processing fee,
For,
an administrative fee?
No.
for collecting money, you know?
I don't,
Everybody else does.
I think that's why we're here. I don't think we should add to it.
So now you're actually on the record of saying that you aren't doing that.
Correct. Well, no, that's me. I'm not speaking for the whole board. Only one.
why don't we,
As if that it's a discussion.
so what are the amounts you wanted to set, which is, I think, the last question that was asked, and what have you seen, 100?
I should have wrote them down there, and I've seen anywhere from the first being 50 or 60 and then up to, for the next round, 100 to 100.
Well, I mean, even in practice, if you had, let's say it's an hour, quote unquote, wasted. You know, professional fee of $50 plus gas, you know,
Yeah, they're never gonna get whole.
right.
Yeah.
But if the first fine is $100, the second is $2, so be it.
Right.
I mean, I think it's enough to try to rectify whatever problems you have.
So 100 and then 200, is that what?
That would be my recommendation.
I'm fine with that, but then do we go to 80-4?
What's that?
They fail to pay the fee, if they fail, well, the way it's written, if they fail to register.
Pay. Then they go to the magistrate.
Then, yeah, then they go to jail. Then they really need an alarm.
The 100 and 200, is that the,
That would be my recommendation.
So 100 after how many?
100 out from the,
After 3, right?
well, no, the first two, after the second, they get a notice letter, kind of like,
Right,
Right,
and then on the third, they get hit with the $100 fine.
so
correct,
that's
If
the
it-
third
if you get a
one.
fourth, it's 200, fifth, 200, sixth, 200.
right.
Okay?
Yep,
Okay, I can do that. And if I anticipate any issues with the red, that's the one that might be a little tricky, but I'm sure there's a way we can find around it. All right,
Okay. And then that brings us to the second thing that we amended the agenda for, which is the property maintenance code.
right, so. In the fall of last year, I think the board was talking about a property maintenance strip for Smithfield Township. I put one together, taken from a few other ordinances, and because it's my understanding the board is not interested in the international property maintenance code at this point. You're looking for your own Smithfield Township specific property maintenance code. So what you have before you is a draft property maintenance code ordinance, that has taken from a couple of different municipalities, that I've seen.
Like Pocono.
Poconos,
Township.
your portion of Poconos is in here and some others. I don't know if you want to go through it tonight, if you want to give me direction, if you have comments or revisions. if you want to take some time to review it, if you want to put it on the agenda for the next meeting to discuss and potentially authorize moving forward with it, that's, the board. But in a nutshell, this is establishing a new chapter 134 in the code of ordinances, names of properties, and establishing, certain regulations associated with that. Specifically, if you look at 134.6 and 134.7, they go through a number of situations and conditions that are at the heart of the ordinance. Do you want me to go through it, or do you want to talk?
No, I think I had looked at this when you sent this out last year. I think it's fine.
When I reviewed it over the last couple of days, I don't know, every item that I thought was maybe going too far, once I thought it through, I thought, no, it's not going too far, because if it's a tenant that's in there and, you know, the guidelines, then this is a way for them to complain about a landlord as well. The only benefit, I don't think there's anything that will hurt the town.
I would be in favor of putting this on the agenda for the next meeting for action.
For adoption or for authorization to be advertised for adoption?
Yeah, it's just you have to advertise.
Yeah.
So not advertising if we
Well,
adopt it the next
couldn't
meeting.
we, if you folks are fine with it now, what are the advertising requirements, how many days?
This is a standalone, so, it's gotta be advertised at least a week before the meeting, 7 days.
Well,
So-
did you have a chance to review it, right?
I did. I mean, again, I think it's long overdue. I would just get it done. I mean,
Okay.
So we could make a motion to authorize the advertising this evening. And then have it on the next agenda for adoption. We would have time to do that, yes?
First, right?
Yeah, that would be the sixth, April 6th. Our next meeting would be that's another thing. For April, instead of the second and fourth Thursday, our meetings are going to be the first and third Thursday to accommodate a conference that we're attending.
Michelle, do you know how quickly what the newspaper is in advance notice?
It's usually 24 hours unless it's on a Friday. I mean, if you need something in the paper on Monday and you send it Friday, it'll be in on Tuesday.
I think we should, if you want it for the next meeting, or I don't know how quickly you want it, we could do it for the next meeting, if we jump on it, if not, it could be at the meeting after that, up to the board.
Well, I would make a motion to authorize the solicitor to advertise.
Second.
Any comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And you're all okay with the way it reads currently?
yeah. Except for that
Good job.
$10 word that Mark wrote out.
You want me to find
An alternative word for it.
probably garbage things.
Right, it's probably just supposed to say garbage, but you dug into your legal dictionary and put
Anything.
something in there.
What, organic garbage,
Right.
is it rot? Right, the word means
Do
something.
you want me to
that
fix the
that
words?
rots.
You want me to use my words?
No, thank you.
So I'm advertising this for the April
Sixth
6th meeting.
meeting.
If for some reason there's a hiccup with the advertisement, if we can't get it in the paper,
That's
it'll
Then it would be
be for the following.
the 20th,
Correct.
yeah.
Okay,
Okay, terrific.
thank you. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Okay, Ben, engineers report. We've got a bunch of stuff tonight.
Yeah, I did a bunch of stuff. His first item, is regarding the generators installation. Bid opening, and, we had advertised this for bidding an initial round, month or so ago, and, just got the one result that was rejected. So we've gone back and revised, the bid documents slightly to take out the concrete pad installation work, which, Public Works is gonna help take care of that aspect of it. So that's prepared and ready to go out and be advertised for bid. Talking with Michelle earlier, the plan is, I guess, the Pocono Record will have that, for April 5th. So we're eyeing up, and then it'll be, May 11th, just with the shifted April dates. Probably too soon to try and advertise it at this point, so we'll get that second April meeting. With, Village Drive Bridge, we reviewed Keystone Concrete Products bid, and, the supporting documentation they provided, everything, checked out, looked good. The motion that we had made at the last meeting was, a motion to award subject to our review. At this point, we've gotten the required performance and payment bonds, the signed agreement, which the township signed as well, certificate of insurance. At this point, we'll go ahead and issue that notice of award, which is consistent with the motion that we made at the last meeting, and then we start working towards getting that scheduled and planned out for the summer. So I don't think there's any motion we need to make at this point for that. We'll just continue to get the necessary documentation and keep them moving. Item C here, so the Route 209 Hollow Road, this is PennDOT's road widening project. With this, so it was basically back in November, just a brief history on this. So they had sent a letter to the township, making the township aware that they, in the planning for this road construction project, had identified that the township's sanitary sewer facilities were likely to be impacted by the work. So there's some widening that they're proposing, and some grading changes in the area. And we had a conference call, a couple township staff members and myself, just before Christmas, December, where we talked to them about, what was involved, what this process would entail if we were to move forward with it. And basically, the initial request was, did the township want to have, so our office, Gilmore Associates, is the township engineer, do any of the design work for the relocation of that force main if required or desired. And then the second part of it was the township going to handle any of the actual construction work for that relocation. As part of that conference call, I think it was determined that the township wanted Gilmore to handle the design for the relocation for it, but that the construction would be done by PennDOT and their contractors. Over the past few months, it's kind of sporadic correspondence back and forth with them here and there. Really, all that's been done to date is we've had a couple letters that have gone out that have essentially gotten us approved as a consultant for PennDOT, essentially, that they've looked at our cost estimate, which was a little bit over 10,000 is what we would expect to do the necessary right-of-way plans to PennDOT standards for what a forest main relocation would entail. And the way that this would work is, per their design manual 5 standards that they've set, typically the township would share, or whatever utility it is, would share 50% of both the construction and the design costs associated with the utility relocation. They allow for that reimbursement to increase to a 75% reimbursement if certain expedited milestones get hit. Our intention is to do that if that's the direction the township wants to go in. At this point, the next thing that PennDOT has requested us to do is there's a resolution, which is given your packet of information, that's figure 8300 there, the judge word for the resolution. And basically, this resolution states that our intent is that, PennDOT would be giving a 75% reimbursement to the township after completion of the work. To the relocation of that force main. And again, this is just the design cost of it. PennDOT would my understanding is PennDOT would charge the township for 25% of the actual construction cost of the force main relocation after the work's completed. So there would be an exchange after all is said and done. But basically, this resolution just appoints a specific representative for the township, who would be the person to basically make this utility reimbursement agreement with PennDOT down the road. So there are no terms as to what the conditions are at this time. I believe that this would be a separate agreement later on that would be negotiated with PennDOT. I understand that, you know, the project isn't favorable, from my understanding, with the supervisors to begin with. My only recommendation, my recommendation for why a relocation at this time makes sense is that they are widening the cartway where the pavement, well, the force main is currently just off the shoulder. With the widening, it would then fall under the shoulder and possibly travel lane in some areas. And just from what we've seen with the library project, there's points where that force main is shallower than what previous construction drawings had indicated. And so if we're not having it relocated out of the cartway, there's potential risk, you know, with this widening project of collapse of that force main or freezing issues. And if that were to occur, obviously beyond just the headache that would cause in the immediate future, that would be at 100%, you know, of the township's expense at that point. So I guess at this point, I think I don't think we're at the point where we're ready to even necessarily entertain a motion on the resolution, but I guess it would be a matter of discussion as to how the board would like to proceed. You know, with PennDOT, how you would like our office to continue to engage or not engage with them, or maybe going into this next meeting if the adoption of this resolution is something that would be entertained.
Okay, so from where I sit, I mean, really, this is just a mandate from PennDOT, that, you know, making us move something that we had no intention of moving and graciously paying for 75% of it. So, I mean, it rubs the wrong way. We don't know what their estimate is for the cost for construction. So they're asking us to agree to 25% of the cost. We don't even know what that number is. We don't have an estimate. But that may be how PennDOT operates, and I know, you know, PennDOT is dysfunctional at the very least. But again, we're sort of caught between a rock and a hard spot. So, I mean, I think that to save the township whatever funds we can, we would have to agree to this, share, you know, 25%, 75% split, because they're apparently going to proceed with this project. And then, just so everyone recalls, this is part of the project that the township, our EMS, our fire, and many others were opposed to and are opposed to, and notified PennDOT of probably at least 9 to 12 months ago. But they're going to proceed regardless of any safety concerns that the township or fire and EMS have. So,
You want me to ask what were, because I was involved in that, what were the chief concerns?
the chief concern is that they're putting in an intersection, a blind intersection. So, and quite honestly, the way they have it planned out, there's a campground, KOA, on Hollow Road, that you're gonna have all these big campers trying to come out onto 209 at a T intersection where they can't even see cars coming. So that's one of the safety concerns. There's many others. They're creating driveways that don't exist for the property owner on the, I guess would be the east side. They're not improving, the driveways that would be affected, on the other side claiming they don't have the money to do it. Even though if a developer had come in, a private developer had come in with a similar project, PennDOT would require them to do it. So it's a double standard again. But back to your question, I think the only cost-effective way for the township is basically to agree to this 25% and no more. You know, again, I would feel more comfortable if I knew what that 25% represented, but I don't, nor do they.
Again, we're not acting on this tonight, so, I mean, that's certainly a question I could pose to them, is how is that determined? Maybe try to clear that aspect of the process up.
I mean, I presume the way it's worded, that the $10,000 that you quoted for engineering, that's a 75-25% split as well.
Correct.
It's not just engineering gets thrown into the pot of all engineering.
Sorry, say that
Well,
last.
into the pot of all the overall improvements. They have other engineering going on.
I don't believe so. No.
But you're not designing the road.
No, I'm not, no, but I guess what I'm saying is that, are you asking if you'd be responsible for 25% of the engineering of the road?
The way this reads, it's 25% of project costs. I read it to be, or I understand it to be, 25% of what our affected project is. In other words, 25% of the sewer only.
Yeah, I think the way this resolution reads is.
I don't think we had it. Do you have the resolution?
Yeah, it's here.
That's
It's here.
specific to the utility location.
Oh,
There
here it
is
is.
a
I
financial
have it. I
obligation
have
to
it.
be larger project.
And until we know whether the sewer line actually runs under the cartway.
But,
any idea how much? movement-
Sorry, say that again?
Until we know whether the sewer line actually runs under the cartway, we're not gonna know whether it's gotta be moved
Right,
Up and
no,
down
and
or 15 feet to the left.
right, and I think I said in one of the emails as well, is that they had indicated to us is that they will do the like test pit soft digging to confirm depths on either side. I think they even said one spot in the middle as well.
Right, I believe it's correct, 3.
Yeah, and I asked them for status on that, I haven't heard back. I mean, and it's one of those things too, where depending on the results of that, I mean, goodness, you go out there and 3 tests will indicate it's at 8 feet.
Right.
Right, then it's like, all right, then you can have some fair confidence that whatever they're doing is not a risk to the facilities. Maybe at that point, it's, you know what, we don't feel like we need to
Mhm.
have that conversation, but, you know, one of those comes up and it's at 2-3 feet, you know, like run into the library, that's where
Right,
there's potential, could cause some issues for it, so. All right, so I guess at this point, again, we weren't gonna make an action on that resolution, why don't I'll check with them on how the cost for the construction side of things gets determined, when that gets determined, is that in advance of whenever this agreement would go in place?
and the last call I was on, or one of the last calls, they never got back to me as far as, I said that the contractor had to insure the township.
Right.
It wasn't just to the benefit of PennDOT, we had to be insured as well.
Yeah.
On their insurance and their account. But they haven't responded to that yet.
Have they provided a copy of the agreement?
No.
Utility reimbursement agreement?
No, I think you ask if they have a template of it. You wanna take a look at it?
Cause that might have that type of provision in there.
Any questions on that or thoughts?
Mhm.
I had, I think the draft agenda, I had a line item for you, but I don't think it's on the one from tonight. Were we talking about the, supply well thing, was that, or was that?
Yeah, I thought that was on here too.
No,
Okay.
that was for the workshop, I thought. With the supply
No,
walls.
I had asked for it
I
to,
have it on, the one I'm looking at on the screen.
well, all right,
No,
so I'll make a
it's
motion
not
to
on here,
add
but
a
I
diagram.
I was looking sure if there was something that would take
I,
it back.
yeah, I know you made all the
looking-
copies and
I'm
stuff.
looking at supply well, the
Right,
one that is,
right.
yeah.
Okay.
Here,
I.
Okay, so we found water without using a divining rod.
Well, you know, people insist those things work. Right, anyway. Yeah, so Tom Gillespie, licensed geologist out of our office, he did the evaluation, we looked at 21 properties that the township owns. He basically reviewed his, mapping of the bedrock in the area, reviewed some literature on the different formations within the township, took a look at aerials, basically, he compared the memo that I think I sent out end of last week. The end conclusion, of his assessment was that, the formations, the bedrock formations in the township generally are not the most suitable for supply wells, which is kind of consistent with what PA American's been experiencing based on my conversations with them. The property, right up the street here, actually, so Judy Pudick Park, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, was identified as having what looked like four, you call it like fold features, I'm not a geologist, but basically, areas that seem indicative of having a higher likelihood of, more substantial water supply if you were to put a supply well in. Maybe to take a step back real quick, a lot of this was initiated based off of conversations we had previously around potential grants, the desire to try and extend public water and sewer along Route 209 to help promote commercial development. And I asked if they wanted me to reach out to Jeremy Nelson with Gay Americans, since I interacted with him on with Mount Nebo and a few other projects as well, and had a call with them and basically just see what was the holdup for them on extending public water further down 209 where it currently ends. And he said that the main barrier is the lack of water supply, that the supply wells that they've had have slowly lost yield over time, and trying to put new ones in, especially with CCP, without much luck at all. And so in conversation, it was, what would be the next step to, or what would be required to extend sewer, extend water down to a 9. It was basically identifying a property where supply well could be sited. And so, if the whole point of this was to try and see if there was any township owned property that might be suitable, it seemed like for Tom's assessment, one was found. We prepared a memo, we had a couple of figures documenting what those features look like. And I guess at this point, my recommendation would simply be to reach out to PA American with this information to start a conversation as to what, if there's an interest on their end, for them to do, some kind of exploration, on that property as far as reciting a supply well. Obviously, there would need to be, a lease agreement or something that would go in place if it wound up to be suitable and this is something that they wanted to pursue. Yeah, I guess at this point, I just wanted to open up the conversation to see how the board would like to proceed with the results of Tom's assessment. If you want me to reach out to Jeremy or someone else there, we can certainly do that, or if you think a more formal approach from, say, Pat or from the board directly is more appropriate this time, I think that's fine too.
Okay. Well, we found water at Judy Pudick Park, which
I
is,
just want to be careful. We ain't
We
There was
think
no,
we-
there's no on-site assessment, you know,
Yes,
they would,
we
the first thing they
understand.
would probably do is go out and actually install test wells. And those are considerable costs, so I am not recommending at all that the township bear that cost. In conversation with the American, the way it was explained to me was basically if the township on a property that they thought was suitable, that they were comfortable with potentially siting a supply well on, that they would basically take on the responsibility for the exploration efforts associated with that. So I am by no means, and Tom has some recommendations for further evaluation at the end of his memo. There are other things that he can do, walking the site, looking at even more high def aerials that could give a higher level of confidence that this property would be suitable. I think probably talking to PA American at this point is the more appropriate next step as
Okay,
opposed to.
so as I said in my email to you yesterday, we found what looks like water at Judy Putek Park, which is a stone's throw away from 209. We could supply this building with public water if we needed to. They had, PA American Water had an appetite for water, 2 years ago and then last year ago. Given how much time it took them and took Jeremy to get water to the apartments at Mount Nebo, which held up that project, I think this is a way to be proactive and to tell them what you found so far. And I'm in favor of the engineer starting that conversation back up again with PA American Water and supplying what's been found, and then let's see what they come back with. I am also, like you, not at all in favor of paying all these exploration costs. But if they've already indicated to you that they would do so, then why not share with them the information that we've already gotten? That just makes sense to me. It's no harm to us.
Or how would they take the property? Or how would they access the property for test wells, et cetera? Like how, that we just let
Well,
them,
that's a question for, first it starts with a conversation. Are they interested in doing this? If so, how does that proceed? And again, Judy Putek Park was purchased with open space grants and all of that, so I'm sure there's some restriction.
Yeah, I mean,
But first, let's see if there's an appetite for it, and then we can ask Pat to explore how it is. Would it be an easement? Would it
could be as
be?
simple as a license, depending on how
Yeah.
these sample wells are gonna be in place. I mean, that
Mhm.
could be an easement, could be temporary construction, there could be a number of, but the conversation should take place, and then if that's the direction township and PWC wanna go, let me know and I'll look at it, but obviously, for something like this, I think we wanna keep it as simple as, if I'm understanding what the intent is, a license might do it, but I think the conversations take place, but.
Thank you.
And these are for test wells, not for the permanent well at this point, right?
Oh, right, I mean, they clearly would have to do their own.
We don't have any reason to have one here now. There is no one, even. No public one. So they'd have to decide which way the ongoing on they wanted to go.
Right.
Does see no harm in starting, the conversation and getting the information.
Should that be a motion then?
Yeah, I would make a motion for Ben to proceed, with speaking to PA American Water and sharing the information from the report that your geologist has done.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Anybody? All in favor? Aye.
I think that's, well, I maybe, I can add one more thing real quick, the stormwater management ordinance. We reviewed the correspondence from MCCD, regarding the buffers, we're reviewing that, making revisions. I hope to have a revised ordinance to you and the pad for review here probably the next week or so.
Are we up against the timeline with that? Or is that-
There's, I believe it's in early May timeframe.
So it was May 1.
So we didn't get it, on act on it by the second payment in April.
It would, yeah, April 20th, that would be.
That's all.
Okay, well, thanks, Ben. It's the most you've had in a long
I
time.
know, making up
Right?
for it.
Do you need a lozenge?
Mouse will dry, yeah.
Aw.
That's just nerves.
Okay, so that brings us to old business, and we're back to revitalize 209. So for resolution 03-2023-1, a resolution repealing resolution 02-2023-4, and establishing the revitalized Route 209 grant program to improve and revitalize the Route 209 corridor within Middle Smithfield Township. So I don't know, Pat, if you want to say a few words first?
Sure. As the board recalls, you adopted a prior resolution 2023-4, establishing the revitalized Route 209 grant program. Since that point in time, we've taken a closer look at the resolution. There were some revisions made,
Right.
some adjustments made. And now you have a revised resolution in front of you, specifically repealing prior resolution 02-2023-4 and adopting this new resolution, again, establishing the revitalized Route 209 grant program. If you want to go through, can go through it in detail. The idea is to provide a grant program for properties along the Route 209 corridor that are in need of repair or replacement. And there are specific list of potential projects that this grant program would apply to, all of which are within the discretion of the Board of Supervisors when we receive an application from a property owner. The understanding is that none of the projects will be in excess of $20,000 to avoid any potential bidding issues, and that the township would be the township would fund through the grant no more than 50% of the grant application.
Okay, so I would make a motion to adopt resolution 03-2023-1.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Anybody?
You're on mute.
I know our chair of the
They're all muted.
EDC is very,
They can unmute themselves.
Oh, I thought you knew.
Yeah.
They can undo it.
Oh, yeah.
I have a question.
but the solicitor has a question.
Silly question. But, just curious as to the numbering system for your resolutions, because so the one that was adopted is 02-2023-4.
Mhm.
Right, and then this one's gonna be 03-2023-1.
Right.
So the three of them, I just wanna know for my own,
It's the month.
the last number is the month.
No, the first one number is the month. The last number is the number of resolutions in that month.
In the year.
No, just in the month.
In March of 2023, this is the first resolution.
Okay,
Item B is the second resolution for March 2023.
okay. That helps, thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Silly question. I knew-
No, I'm glad to help the solicitor.
Okay, so there's been a motion and a second, which means it's open for discussion. We have both the chair of the Economic Development Committee and the Economic Development Committee manager. Do you have any words you would like to say?
No.
I hear nothing. Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so then the next motion, the next resolution is resolution 03-2023-2, which is the resolution that establishes the ad hoc committee for revitalized Route 209 grant committee for the purpose of making recommendations to the Board of Supervisors regarding letters of interest and applications associated with the Middle Smithfield Township Revitalized Route 209 Grant Program.
I make a motion.
So just as we have, established a
Okay.
committee for,
Huh?
Mike made a motion.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm still talking, I'm still speaking. So just as we established a committee for the sign committee, we are now establishing a committee for this grant program. And very loosely, the way it's has set up, I mean, the board has seen this resolution in September and then in January and unanimously agreed to it, that up to 2 members would come from the Historical Commission, up to 2 members would come from the Planning Commission, and up to 2 members would come from the Economic Development Committee. And then up to 4 members would come from the public, because the committee would consist of 5 to 7 people. So that is the spirit in which it was created. Pat, thank you for putting this together. In changing the words shall come from to may come from, I hope to offer the board some more flexibility. I still hope that the spirit in which this committee was conceived remains. So I believe Mike wanted to make a motion to adopt this.
Yep.
And I will second. Any comments or questions from anyone? Okay. All in favor?
all right.
Aye. Okay, so now a new committee was born.
And, just, together, kind of in association with those 2 resolutions that you just adopted, there are now, Middle Smithfield Township Revitalized Route 209 Grant Program terms and conditions, that'll be, used and as guidelines associated with the program, as well as an application form and, indemnity and release agreement that applicants will sign as part of the process. So the next part, not tonight, but at some future meeting, maybe, I don't know how the board wants to proceed with appointing, those committee members.
Currently, what we did, I had provided the board with a draft, email and a draft press release to go out about this, in, I think, September and again in January. So we can go over that in a workshop session to, get that out, but we had spoken to the 3 committees in question and told the chairs, they can collect interest from their committees. Their committees will submit the names to the board of the folks who would be interested in sitting on this committee. Then the board can choose. But of course, we have to advertise now because it's also members of the public that can be considered for position. And that's it.
Yeah, just to be clear, I don't know if you can, there's not a legal requirement to advertise. You can post on the website, you can
Right,
announce that you want,
right.
there's no legal requirement to
Right.
advertise for these.
Well, thank you. Okay, so that brings us to new business, the dreaded purchasing agent policy. The board had been discussing amongst ourselves a purchase ordering system, and we've come up with an electronic system. Right now, we just have an Excel spreadsheet to do this. Pat had come up with a resolution, which doesn't have to be a resolution. It could be a policy, just like we have policies in our HR handbook. But I mean, the intent with which this was created was to assign people the positions, employees, the positions of having purchasing agents, and then we have petty cash, but we don't have a petty cash officer. So I know Mike, you're against having.
Well, I would say that Mark and I and Annette spoke about this at a workshop meeting. It was brought up at least twice, maybe 3 times, and all 3 times, Mark and I said that this was unnecessary. Now, why it's on the agenda when 2 out of 3 have already determined to be unnecessary, I'm not sure.
Well, I really haven't heard from Mark that it was.
Mark was at the same meeting I was at.
Unnecessary. No, hold on, I'm still speaking. What, we had a meeting with Tracer and a number of employees to go over exactly how this purchase order system would work and what would go in the policy or resolution that would govern it,
Well, we didn't discuss the policy with Tracer, we discussed the purchase order.
the system. And we also, in that meeting, I mean, which Michelle was at, if I recall, we did also discuss having certain amounts that the township secretary as purchasing agent would have authority to sign off on how much the golf superintendent would have, what the petty cash officer would have, because all those things go into building an electronic system to handle this. So my question to the board, I mean, I understand that you don't want to have a formal resolution, but couldn't we just have a policy with sign off authority for different employees?
Again, this was asked at least 3 times before, and Mark and I said no.
So there,
Am I right, Mark, or am I?
No, you're correct.
so the employees have zero authority. They have zero sign off authority. I'm asking that question because as of now, some employees do, and there is no board of supervisors sign off on a purchase order. So I guess that's my question.
Well, we do sign off on purchase order.
And we
You don't-
approve
you
every
don't
bill.
sign- You
We-
don't sign off on all purchase orders. And I understand you don't want to have an encumbered system for things that are bills that are day to day, such as electric bills and all of that.
I don't think it's being presented as it was presented to us on the last 3 occasions. I mean, I think if, there's a few things that are always added, little tweaks here and there.
Well, this
that
spreadsheet
are
was at the
not
last,
Agreed, and we said no.
to
Mark
the
and I said no.
spreadsheet. You said
Yeah.
no to the spreadsheet?
We saw this.
The spreadsheet is what we use now. You're just talking about a way of making it electronic versus handwritten.
Right, but when the computer has this and somebody fills this in and they fill down a drop-down menu of where the expense goes, the appropriate manager then gets a notification and has to approve the expense.
This is
before-
like deja vu.
We'll see if that can happen.
I mean, how many times do we have to go through the same thing? I mean, because 2 out of 3 said no. How many times do we have to go through this? We're gonna bring it up next month again?
2 out of 3 said no to the resolution.
No.
At the end of that
No.
workshop session, I then asked about a policy, and at the last workshop session, all 3 of us weren't together. You were there early in the morning, but 2 days prior to that workshop session, you reviewed this spreadsheet, which has not changed at all since then. And you were in favor of it, and the spreadsheet has order of a chain of command of approval for expenses, and the idea was, for example, for admin, up to $500, Michelle would have sign off power. After that, it would go to the next manager to do it. Mike, I think your words were, that's fine if admin wants to do it, but Public Works isn't going to do it. Right? Am I
Correct.
stating that? Okay, so
Correct.
then that's your opinion, and sewer follows it. Admin follows it, zoning for the most, follows it, and when I say for the most part, things like Tracer obviously isn't a purchase order because that was a big expense that was approved beforehand. So that leaves now golf maintenance and golf pro shop. And again, I mean, you have,
Always filling a purchase order out so that we can get a check written.
Correct. And who approves the checks?
well, the supervisors approve the checks after the expense has been incurred.
But my point is, and that the purchase has been made long before the purchase order is filled.
Correct. It's,
And that,
In almost all circumstances.
and that is exactly what drives our budget and finance manager crazy.
Yes.
Because half the time the expenses don't have the correct GL codes on them. or no vehicle code at all, and she's just trying to manage, towards a budget. So, I mean, the county has a system in place, the school
You wanna
district
hold
has a
it, please?
system in place,
I only have,
so.
they're all different.
So, okay, so where did we end up? It's okay for admin, sewer, zoning, but public works.
At this point, I believe that we're still at where two of the three supervisors don't agree with it, so it has to be, I guess you wanna redraft it and
don't
bring it up
agree
to
with-
third, fourth, or
but
fifth
what are we
time,
not agreeing with?
with the way it's proposed.
You're not agreeing with
No, not at all.
bringing this to an electronic system?
I don't know enough about electronic system, it has nothing to do with the electronic system. What I said, it's micromanagement. If you want to get into details of why I said no, we can get into details of why I said no and Mark said no.
Okay, I would like to know.
Okay, again, there is absolutely no reason for three supervisors to have to approve every invoice and every purchase order before the purchase is made.
That is not
You
on
will-
here. That has been
You
changed.
just said that to Mark. You
No,
just said to Mark
I did not.
that the purchases have to be approved before they're made.
Correct. But I did not
Okay.
say all three supervisors. That's
Where,
the whole-
where is
that's
the,
the
where
whole-
is in here, you sent out that you need you need mandatory field, yes or no, drop down, you need AA, MD, MO, or MC, and you wanted
Mm-hmm.
copies going to all the supervisors in email. Where's all that? That was part of the
okay.
discussion, no?
You're,
Oh, that's in here?
yeah,
Okay. Again,
and
Annette,
but
I mean,
that-
just because
excuse-
you don't agree with me and Mark, doesn't mean it has to keep coming up month after month after month.
but it
You have to
hasn't.
take,
This
you
is-
have to
this is
accept the
fir-
fact that two out of the three oppose something.
This is the first time it's come up on a public meeting, number one.
Okay,
Number
so
two-
because we discuss it,
Excuse me, I'm still speaking. Number two, Mark
goodness.
agreed with it when we were sitting in there with Tracy.
I don't have a problem, I do not have a problem with an electronic spreadsheet
Right,
that helps track
okay.
it better.
absolutely, go for it.
I have a
Go
problem
for it.
with needing two, maybe even three signatures from.
Correct.
supervisors
No, you
in
don't.
order to pass it on to
That
the
was
boss.
changed. That was changed with CC. So now the supervisors are advised. Look, back in the day, we kept a list
Micromanagement.
of all purchase orders that were given to us, that were generated for the week, and we saw them during a supervisor workshop. So on a Friday, we saw a list of purchase orders on purchases that were not yet made. And we had the ability to review them, and everybody was aware of what was going on. This is just a way to go back to that. And we had our own system of, for an expense over $1,000, 2 supervisor signatures were required for an expense that was not already a contracted expense. Or, a bill like a utility.
We've
bill.
gone through this. I agree. We've gone through this and I'm not gonna, what I said before, I'll say it again, it's absolutely micromanagement. And if it's a more systemic problem where you don't trust your employees, then something should be done about those employees and not create all these crazy policies that you need 3 people to sign off to keep the township functioning.
Again, we didn't say anything about 3 people signing off. There's nothing in here indicating that, and that was changed meetings ago. It's not about trusting our employees, it's the exact opposite.
No,
I want
that's
to
not true.
I would like to empower our employees to be able
Yeah,
to sign off
you
on
can
purchases up to
twist it.
$500. Or an amount.
Well,
I would like to
Yes.
empower our employees to make.
so let's take a vote.
purchases.
Let's take a vote
On what?
on whatever you're talking about. Take a vote.
On what?
You put it part of the meeting. Take a vote.
But we don't have a final product. We don't have a final resolution. I've marked it up and given it to you, and you said you don't want it. Mark, I think you said a resolution was unnecessary. Then I said, okay, let's make it a policy. What would you like to see in the policy? So now you're saying.
And
it
I'll make
can be.
then I'll make a motion that this policy be discarded because it's unnecessary.
We don't have a policy.
I'm
That's the
making a
whole-
motion that this proposal be discarded because it's unnecessary.
But there is no proposal before you. This is a
There's a motion on the
discussion.
floor.
I don't know. Do you see a proposal?
There's nothing, there's no proposal.
What does it say? purchasing agent policy under new business.
For discussion, right? Just like we had the well discussion, I don't think there's no final paperwork for PA American to vote on. So just
We
as,
did vote, we just voted.
we voted to have him have a discussion, right?
Right.
But there's no policy there. There's no, this is on the agenda for a
So,
policy.
so in
discussion.
concert with the vote to continue discussions with Pay American, I'll make a motion that we discontinue discussions about this.
When you say this, do you mean purchase order system that we're working on with Civic Plus, who did our website?
I thought it was gonna be Tracer. What happened with Tracer?
Yeah.
Tracer was supposed to do, wasn't that why we paid $70,000?
We did not buy that module from Tracer, no. We
No.
went over this in the
I
last.
just wanna make sure I'm clear,
Mhm.
that I heard Treasurer, I heard
Civic Plus,
Civic Plus. Those are two services that the township is engaged in for purposes of your permit, right? Your building and zoning permit, and
Mhm.
the other one was it escapes me.
What's
Civic Plus was out.
Those are two separate and distinct, I wanna make sure I'm understanding them. Those are two separate and distinct items and issues.
Mhm.
This other one, which is a potential resolution or policy for purposes of a purchasing policy or invoice policy within, or purchasing agent policy within the township, that is separate and distinct. But my understanding is the conversation is focusing on that potential policy, right? Not
Yeah.
Tracer, not invoice
That,
plus.
that's correct.
Mhm. Yes, and I was suggesting that we appoint purchasing agents and give them certain authority.
But I'm not in favor of that.
Neither am I.
I am in favor of pursuing an electronic purchase order system if it helps the finance manager manage the finances of the township and
Go for it.
it's a clearer picture.
And that would be through
Probably Civic Plus.
Civic Plus.
Right.
Which again is separate and distinct.
Right.
And that was,
Because I think it's important
what-
to keep these things separate, because when you start mixing them, it's like hard to keep track of what we're discussing.
What I am
Agreed.
saying is that when someone generates a purchase order through this Civic Plus system, we have a purchase order. So we need to have a purchase order system. The purchase order system, somebody's gonna fill it out. Someone's gonna get a notification to say, yes, I approve this expense. And what I was asking for was a map of who that would be. I had suggested employees that as purchase agents up to a certain amount. And then beyond that, it would have to be a supervisor signature and then a board of supervisor signature.
and you don't see that as micromanagement?
You get notifications to your phone.
But again, that doesn't
from
answer the question.
Facebook. As of now, we are doing the exact same thing I just described
No, we're
on paper.
No, we're not.
Have you had conversations with Civic Plus, is it?
Yes,
Have you had conversations with them about this potential, not this policy, but about their service that you can provide?
yes.
And have they asked any questions of you with respect to a policy or appointing anyone as a,
They wanted to know what the chain of commit, what the chain of emails should be. So if you want no approvals, then the answer is, we have a purchase order system where everybody just gets a carbon copy of the expense that is being generated. And if you want to take yourself off the carbon copy list and just see the list of the bills every 2 weeks, you can do that. I don't recommend it. But I am all in favor of being able to assign a job number to each bill so she knows how to pay it. I mean,
so getting back to Civic Plus, because I think you just went back to the policy, right? But getting back to Civic Plus, if you ask them and let them know that you're interested, if that's, I don't wanna put anyone's words in it, but if that's the direction of the board that you're interested in, at least looking at that service, and if you ask them, you know, or to provide you with whatever they have on that service, they will provide you with a form that they want you to fill out to identify how or who. And that might end up being, you know, what you're trying to create with this policy, but I,
That's exactly what it is.
but then
That's
that would be
exactly
through
what it
civic,
is.
if I'm understanding, that would may potentially be through Civic Plus.
But
not
we have to
necessarily
tell
separate.
them who gets what,
And that could be when you go to
And
Civic
who
Plus,
has-
they give you that form,
right?
and they're asking for those answers, that would come back to the board at a meeting, for the board to consider who would be the appropriate individual.
That's what this is. This spreadsheet in front of you is exactly what that is. Our budget and finance manager has already said, without a purchase order form, whether it's on paper or electronic, she still needs
Who's
something.
she?
Bonnie,
Who's that?
budget and finance.
No, I'm
manager.
saying the Civic Plus.
Yeah.
If the direction of the board is to go with Civic Plus, right?
Mhm.
For an online
Mhm.
invoice process. I think you need to ask them about it and have them provide you whatever documentations or services or whatever form, they have forms that they're gonna give you. And then from those forms is how the discussion for that is gonna follow. The discussion will follow that in response to whatever they give you. And whatever they need from the township in order to proceed with that service.
They're gonna ask, the purchase order is generated, who generates the number? The expense is generated, the purchase order with the proposed expense is generated, who does it go to for approval? After it's, and then who fills in, there's a drop-down box where somebody fills in the GL number, and that's what I'm saying, our budget and finance manager needs something that gives the approval to pay the bill, the GL charge code, the general ledger charge code, and a description, so she knows what the stuff is. Civic Plus is gonna say, once this is generated, who gets a copy of it?
And she gets that already with the purchase order. She has all that
But-
same information you just described is on every purchase order.
Well, that is something you'll need to discuss with her, because
Okay, but I don't know why if she can't read the purchase orders and understand.
she's saying the purchase orders come to her without a GL code. If you have
Okay,
an
well,
electronic
but maybe the
system-
person doesn't know the specific GL code.
Right,
That's what she's supposed to police,
okay,
but that's her job.
but if you have a drop-down
I
menu,
don't know every GL code and I've been doing budgets for 12 years.
right, but if you have a drop-down menu, you can choose.
Again,
Still gonna choose
What it
one
is.
of them.
right, they're gonna choose the wrong number. Then what? Then we have to get a different company?
Well, it's better than, what do you mean a different company?
Well, I don't know. I mean, what
Why
are we
would
doing
we get
here?
a different company?
Because maybe they don't have the right drop-down menu.
No, we give them the information. We tell them what the drop-down.
And like Mark said, what if they choose the wrong number in the drop-down menu? Then what?
Then it goes back to the manager to say,
Well,
yeah, this
it's-
invoice doesn't match.
It has nothing,
Excuse me?
you're,
Don't you just have a book with
Yes.
all the different?
Yeah.
items,
Yes.
just the number and
Yeah.
that's it. Maybe somebody picks a wrong number.
Agreed. every company in the
Right.
world.
When somebody's
Right.
buying a case of toilet paper and they're filling a purchase order out for it, they
Right.
might not really be concerned
Right.
about having the right general. ledger.
Correct. Is that building
But
or
whether
does it because it's sewer or is it?
this, it's the same thing. It's the same chart of accounts, right,
And the
right.
long run is gonna be cheaper.
right, exactly. That's exactly right.
And they just.
And again,
Needed in the numbers.
if it,
Mhm.
I have no problem with this spreadsheet program, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. That's not what we're talking about. We keep reverting back to the spreadsheet and all this, the right numbers and the right description. That's not the basis of the discussion.
Well,
And if Bonnie wants a purchase order for every med ed bill,
Yeah,
it's on here.
no, she
can Go ahead
doesn't.
and make one.
She doesn't, because we specifically said it's not for utilities or things that are contracted service. So if the board, for example, votes to approve a contract for, let's say it was the energy audit that you got, we voted on that contract. She has the contract. She doesn't need Mike to fill out a purchase order for a contract that the board already agreed to. So that eliminates a lot of this. This is for expenses that are not, utility bills, regular bills that we would get, or things that were already contracted. So it sort of mimics the school district system and the county system. We would just Trying to be efficient.
Overly, I think you're overly, efficient. You're ahead,
Thank you.
there you go,
Yeah.
right?
Futuristic.
Plus, let's see what's the big plus tax.
Yeah.
All right.
Motion,
Okay, motion to adjourn.
motion.
Second. All in favor? You actually don't even need a second and a vote to adjourn.
Thank you, audience.
Polite anyway.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a nice night.
Good
Congratulations,
night.
Joe, you have your committee
Yeah.
and your ordinance. All right, thank you. You have
Bye.
your utilized 209. See you later, folks.
Oh, that-
Ciao.
Lucky to know I gave up the escape room and came here instead.
I feel like I was just in the escape.